Hi, this is Dan Hink, and welcome to another edition of the Skull Sessions. And today, my guest is Will Murray. That's correct?
That's correct.
All right. Well, so what do you got going on? You have a very interesting history there. So tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I've been a writer for probably 50 years, give or take, and a lifelong Lovecraftian. I was one of the three people who organized the Friends of H.P. Lovecraft to put the Lovecraft plaque on the grounds of the John Hay Library in Providence, Rhode Island, on the occasion of the Lovecraft 90th or 100th centennial in 1990. And I've written a lot of Cthulhu inspired stories, and I've been collecting them over the last 3 years in the Wild Adventures of Cthulhu. And just today, I got the cover to volume 3 from Eric Lofgren, who's done my other Cthulhu covers. And this image, I'll try to get out of the way, it depicts Cthulhu being attacked by Krahalku. Krahalku is the cosmic octopus god from another dimension that was inspired by Lovecraft's Cthulhu, but written by A. Merritt in his 1933 novel Dwellers of the Mirage. And I recently got the rights to write a sequel to Dwellers of the Mirage. So this will be a novella in the new Wild Adventures of Cthulhu Volume 3, which will probably come out before the end of the year.
So that octopus god, that was invented by a writer that lived in a contemporary time with
Yeah,
Lovecraft. Like,
it's
were
very
were they pen
interesting.
pals? Were they friends?
They were not pen pals, but when Lovecraft visited New York, Merritt heard about the visit and invited Lovecraft to dinner at some club that Merritt belonged to. Merritt was an editor for the a pretty major magazine that I'm blanking on right now. It might have been the American Mercury, and we always wondered if Merritt was influenced by Lovecraft. It seemed as if he had, because he had a lot of Lovecraftian ideas in Dwellers in the Mirage. But no one knew for sure until Lovecraft's letters began to be reprinted and the story of their meeting came out. And according to Lovecraft, Merritt said, I really enjoy your stories and weird tales. So there's no question that this was, Lovecraft influenced. So when I obtained the rights to Dwellers of the Mirage to do a sequel, I thought, well, it's time these two octopus gods meet.
Yeah, I don't know if Cthulhu would be like he has octopus like tentacles and like octopus features. I never really thought, I don't know why, but I never really thought of him as an octopus god. Just seems like this weird thing from another dimension.
Yeah, he is. And, he's antlers and legs like a human being, or like King Kong, since he's huge. And he's octopus like in that his head is like an octopus head with tentacles, but he's got bat wings or dragon wings. And,
Depending on the interpretation, yeah.
yeah, well, the way Lovecraft drew him gave him an octopus or squid head, kind of a monster human body. And like I said, these wings here that you can see in the background, at least one of them. And so, he's been called an octopus god, but, Lovecraft called him sort of an octopus, squid, devil, dragon kind of a combination.
Okay. Oh, I have one question because
Sure.
obviously I'm a big Lovecraft fan, so I see like different versions of Cthulhu. I've seen well over 100. I painted plenty myself. I've tattooed them myself, but now it seems like it's coming to add like three eyes, per side. Is that kind of a newer interpretation? Like did
No,
Lovecraft?
that's how Lovecraft drew the original Cthulhu sketches. He had three eyes on each side of his head.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Yeah, I was unaware, and they just popped up. I was like, hey, I wonder. So actually, the two-eyed Cthulhu was like a different interpretation, a more
Yeah, it's an
modern interpretation.
interpretation. It's not authentic to Lovecraft.
Okay. I wonder what do you know what made that transition? Like maybe like I know Hollywood loves to anthropomorphize everything.
Well, I think everybody feels, free to interpret the character as drawn and described by Lovecraft. Some people make him big and muscular, and other people, portray him correctly as more gaseous or more like not made of physical matter. But we've seen a lot of Cthulhu's who are muscle bound, like they go to the gym, and that's a powerful interpretation. But he's not so much made of mass as he's made of some other matter from some other dimension.
Okay. So he doesn't have a corporeal body at all, or he does?
He
Like
has a body,
I've
but it's
heard him
not.
with the belly is like a more correct interpretation of him.
He's got a body, but it's not made of the substance that we're made out of.
Right.
It's not corporeal, which means that I think in the original story someone rams a boat into him and it affects him, but there's also the sense that it goes sort of through him, so he doesn't vibrate on our level. He's physical.
I think that was very cognizant of like pretty cognizant of like Lovecraft, because I remember I saw like an interview with Neil deGrasse Tyson, and he was saying like one of the big problems he has with like sci-fi and Hollywood is all the aliens are basically humanoid. He's like the weirdest thing would be if aliens had DNA. He's like he thought the most accurate interpretation of an alien presence in Hollywood was the Blob. It's totally different than than like the all the other interpretations of like aliens that come in this world and like arguing for peace or whatever. So yeah, just a side note, but it's cool that Lovecraft saw that back in the 30s.
Yeah, and not only that, but recent studies of cephalopods, octopuses and squids and creatures like that, seem to indicate they're not really normal for our planet. They don't seem to have any of the usual attributes of other creatures.
I've heard that. I've heard the whole panspermia thing with like maybe like there are things that survive in the vacuum of space, like tardigrades. So they think that like maybe some like early like cellular masses came to Earth and that evolved into the octopus as we know it. I've heard that octopi don't have the same DNA that we have.
Yeah. So, like, where did they come from? Why are they so different? I mean, they have attributes that no other creatures have. I mean, chameleons can change color, but octopi can change patterns as well as color. And
also, they're amazing. Have you seen the documentary My Pet Octopus?
I think I have, yeah. I've seen several.
My girl is Korean, so we go to the Korean market all the time. And, until I saw that documentary, I would buy like octopus legs or like squid legs. After that, I was like, I can't do it. They're too cool. They're too intelligent. I can't do it.
Yeah, exactly. They're each of their tentacles, their arms are controlled separately. Then we control
there's like a brain on each one.
Yeah, we control our arms and legs and everything else from our main brain, our central brain, and these guys have sub brains that control each arm because they're more complicated limbs than our limbs because they're much more flexible. And also, you ever seen the videos of an octopus escaping from a tight space where it just sort of
I've seen a lot. I went down the rabbit hole. I've watched all of them. I think they're amazing. Pretty cool. Yeah. And I've heard that like I always wanted to pet octopus, but I heard don't do that because I heard that like in the wild they live about 8 years, but in captivity they only live about 4.
Yeah.
I know that my girl, when she was little, she would go to the aquarium and there was an octopus, and they're so intelligent the octopus would recognize her, would come say hello to her, and then one day she came and it died. And she was like a really sad little girl just crying and could not be consoled because that was her buddy.
Yeah. There was a great article or video on an octopus that lived in an aquarium and was annoyed by the light that was kept on at night, and it squirted water on it until it went out. It short-circuited the light. So that's
awesome. Yeah, I think they're so cool. All right, man. So let's talk about what you got going on. Like, I think everyone knows I'm a huge Lovecraft fan.
Right.
And it sounds like you are like kind of continuing is it kind of based off of the Lovecraft Cthulhu mythos? Is
Yes.
it,
But these are modern stories set in our now, most but not all of them. Some of them are set in the past, some are set in Lovecraft's time, but most of them involve a arm that I've created of the National Reconnaissance Office. These are the guys who run the spy satellites, and they have a secret arm called the Cryptic uh, Evaluation Center. And these government agents, sort of like the X Files, I created it before the X Files, but like the X Files, when there are anomalous events occurring, they investigate, and most of the time they find Cthulhu-oid, creatures or problems, and most of the time they get clobbered, trying to solve the mystery. And so I wrote about a dozen or so of those, and these are collected in the Wild Adventures of Cthulhu so far in 2 volumes. As I say, the cover and behind me is for volume 3. And they're fun. They're serious, but sometimes mock serious. Occasionally, some of them have a humorous angle to them. And basically, our government in my stories is fighting the hopeless fight against the great old ones on the best level they can. And most of these stories end in doom, but occasionally they live to fight another day.
Yeah, that's one thing I love about Lovecraft. He is like that, try and wrap it up with that like happy ending. Like most of the stuff is dark,
Yeah,
like
very
people
dark.
end up going mad or they end up dying or whatever. But that's way more realistic. And like I think the strength of his stuff, like I think some of his writing is a little bit forward, like of that time,
Mm-hmm.
but his ideas are timeless and they're
Oh,
brilliant.
absolutely. I just had an article that's about to be published that I discovered in Lovecraft's letters and some of his stories that he actually hinted where Cthulhu came from. And he gave the place a name, and apparently it's some dark planet far from our universe. And
Well, then
Love,
that whole like multi-dimensional cosmic horror thing, that is Lovecraft. It's like
it is
he
Lovecraft,
credits the person who inspired it.
absolutely. And Lovecraft, in his stories and poetry, talked about what he called planets that didn't orbit a sun, just dark planets moving through the universe.
Which is true,
And,
yeah.
and they've since been discovered. When he was talking about that
Yeah, it's
stuff, this
amazing.
was not
I
known.
sorry.
That's okay.
No, I know that he was he was a smart guy and he did like a whole bunch of research. I mean, he had like a lot of social issues. Like his mom said it's too ugly to go out. She had to
Yeah, yeah,
lock him in the closet and stuff. But he loved to read and do research, and he actually there's a lot of stuff that it's like when people bring stuff up and go, oh, maybe, but a lot of his stuff proved to be true.
yeah, absolutely. And he also got a lot of inspiration from dreams, and he had some very weird dreams where he would visit ruins in strange places or other planets or other realities. And some of these dark planets and dark galaxies he wrote about, he first saw in dreams.
Dreams of the Witch House.
Just dreams that he had.
um, Let me take a quick diversion. So Hollywood does all these interpretations of Lovecraft. Is there like are there movies you prefer, like interpretations you prefer, and ones that you like less?
I used to cover the film industry for a magazine called Starlog in Fangoria, and
Okay.
I, I I was very intensely a moviegoer. I have not been going to movies since the pandemic, and I've been missing out on a lot of stuff. So I haven't seen a Lovecraft series, a direct Lovecraft adaptation. I don't think since the Reanimator movies, which is now a
Wow.
long time ago. I think because I like Lovecraft in print, and I think that filmmakers tend to adapt in maybe directions that aren't faithful.
Yeah,
I,
I feel like they miss the ball. It's like it's
yeah,
way stronger when Lovecraft does it. Even if it's a Lovecraft story, they always alter it a little bit. Like I saw, it's fairly recent. I saw it like on TV. like on Netflix or something. It was called The Color Out of Space with
Yeah,
Nicolas Cage.
I want to see that. You
Yeah.
know, they had mixed reviews, but a lot of those movies will get mixed reviews. I covered Evil Dead 2 for Fangoria back in the day,
Oh, that's
and
one of my favorite movies ever.
that's considered um, one of the better Lovecraft adaptations, even though it's not an adaptation. They sort of retroactively put the Necronomicon in it. Yeah, I remember going to the cabin in Wilmington, was it Wadesboro, North Carolina, for Fangoria, and it was quite an experience because we got to walk through the cabin and watch them film, and they filmed a lot in a junior high school gymnasium, and we went there too. So I just wrote about my experiences on Evil Dead 2 for a magazine called Retro Fan that will be out this October. It was sort of a retrospective of what it was like to go on a now classic movie back when nobody thought it was going to be a classic movie.
Yeah, no, I saw that like I'm 51 now. I saw that when I was like 12 and it
Yeah,
blew my mind. I was like, I can't believe that movie can, that was my favorite movie for the longest time. Like I have that tattooed on my knuckles.
yeah.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Evil Dead.
It's interesting how the franchise has managed to be revived and revived. I haven't kept up on it because one of the reasons I'm not seeing movies and TV shows is I write a lot. I
Right.
think
Yeah.
I'm up to about 90 books and novels, and
Wow. Yeah.
you don't write all that
If you haven't
material.
seen it, Evil Dead Rises, the last one was good.
Yeah.
It was really
Okay.
good.
Good. That's good to know.
Like it feels like it kind of like dropped down for a little. Like it wasn't like they said it was a remake, and then some people say it's a sequel. That new
Right.
Evil Dead, and
Right.
like you see Ash's car when they get there. So I guess it kind of like supposed to like give you some clues toward maybe it's a sequel. But I wasn't real big on that. It was just like blood in your face, gore in your face, and like what makes those is like how good the stories are.
I remember Sam Raimi telling me he was definitely going to get an R rating, and he was pulling back on the blood and gore, but he still didn't do it. The movie, he just, even though he pulled back and restrained himself, it still was a little too much for his production. Not production. Gina De Laurentiis was funding it, and they were giving him a hard time. Look, we don't want another cult hit. We want a mainstream film, which they did deliver. You know, but it was pretty intense.
Yeah. But that's Evil Dead or Evil Dead 2?
Two,
What
two.
2 is
I
like
was on.
basically just like I feel like a slightly higher budget, slightly
Mhm.
more refined reshoot of one. Although
Yeah,
I've seen, both of Evil Dead 2 and I've seen Army of Darkness in the theaters. Like I saw Army of Darkness when it came out, but
yeah.
I saw them fairly recently where somebody got the original, film copies. And the funny thing is, like, I love Evil Dead, but if you see it on the big screen, you're like, oh well, there they cut and pasted a mood.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah. It's
very,
more of
very
a video
indie.
movie.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's more for the small screen. It works
Oh,
better on screen.
okay. So let me ask you a little bit about what you got going on with the whole Cthulhu thing. Do you have more than one series? You have one series? What are you doing with that?
Well, the Wild Adventures of Cthulhu's up to this point have been mostly reprints of stories that I've had in anthologies over the last 30 or so years. In the last volume, volume two, I did write some new stories to fill out the book. For this volume, it's a mix of new stories and reprints. And the um, thrust of the story, it's actually in two parts. In the lead up novelette, uh, our U.S. government underwater drones are picking up what seems to be the aftermath of attack on the sunken city of Relia in the
Okay.
Pacific, and they're finding these skulls. They think are deep one skulls, but they're gigantic, and they're saying, where do these skulls come from? And the only thing they can think of is either they're cleaning house in Relia, or somebody's been attacking Relia and annihilating the attackers and setting their skulls up in mounds and totem poles as a warning to the attackers not to come back. And this escalates and escalates. And eventually this sets the stage for Krahalku, who exists in another dimension and is kind of an avatar of Yog Sothoth. He's essentially an octopus, but he's also a void, and he's the anti-life. Basically, when he breaks through to our reality, he just consumes everything into the void of nothingness that, is basically his matter, his corpus. And we're going to have a face-off between Cthulhu and Krahalku. You have to remember that Cthulhu was considered a high priest of the great old ones. He wasn't necessarily a great old one as such. He was a lower level entity compared to Yog Sothoth and
Or like a Zazgoth and stuff like that would be like above him. Yeah.
Yeah. So in this story, and I haven't worked out all the details because I haven't written the story yet.
Oh, I have a quick question. Where in that canyon does the Nyarlathotep fall?
This story,
Nyarlathotep, I think. Yeah.
Oh, Nyarlathotep. He's an avatar of, I think, the crawling chaos Azathoth. So if Nyarlathotep is a humanoid avatar, Krahalku, which is behind me with the red eyes, is an octopus avatar of Yog Sothoth.
Okay.
That's how I think about it.
Okay.
Because I have to respect Lovecraft's point of view, but also A. Merritt's point of view with his book, and he made Krahalku so much more powerful than Cthulhu. In the sense that he's trying to come into our reality, and when he does, he's going to extinguish everything. When Cthulhu rises at the end of our age, he's going to preside over the remaking of the earth and the eradication of mankind so that the great old ones can take over. But Krahalku just wants to destroy everything. He wants to absorb everything. He's anti-life. So he's got a different attitude, shall we say.
So Cthulhu is more interested in enslaving mankind, and the other creature is more interested in just exterminating everything. It's like doing a Thanos, like everybody disappears.
Yeah, I think Cthulhu is more interested in rulership,
right?
And Krahalku is in destruction. So, but I haven't worked out the story yet, so I may make some adjustments to that.
Okay, and these are largely available, like they're short stories now collected into full novels?
The short stories and novelettes. Some of them are short and some of them are very long.
Okay, and what are they like? Are they available in like a paperback edition?
Yeah, you can go to Amazon and look up my name, Will Murray, and you can go type up The Wild Adventures of Cthulhu. We have 2 volumes already out there, and the third one is they were working on now. And I'm very thrilled that this cover came in because it came in within the last couple of hours. I wouldn't have had it, if we'd done this podcast a day before. So it's a lucky break that we have this image. I do have other images. Let me see if I can get one.
Well, you can send to me, and I'll put them on the screen. Just mention them, and it'll pop up on the screen.
Okay. So Eric Lofgren is my cover artist. Most of the work that I've done, he's done with me, has been stock art that I've reused. This is the first time I've commissioned him for a cover, and he turned it around very fast, much faster than I thought. I think I've only had the pencil sketch a week or so, and he's already produced this thing, so I'm very happy with it.
So, is it everything you do with Lovecraft, is that like mainly in written work? Like I think you mentioned like you've written for comics as well. Are any of those like in graphic novels?
No, I haven't done any graphic novels. I created Squirrel Girl, the unbeatable Squirrel Girl for Marvel Comics, but I've only written her origin story and a couple other ones, and or introductory story, I should say. And the other comics I did for Marvel was The Destroyer, based on the paperback series that became a movie, Remo Williams' The Adventure Begins. I did 40 of those. So mostly I'm a prose writer, and I've written a lot of scholarship on Lovecraft. I've written a lot of stuff about him and about his works. But, I really like writing short stories with his characters.
Okay. Yeah, I've like one of my favorite writers would be Alan Moore, but I really didn't like his take on Lovecraft. Like it
Uh,
seems like a number of people wanted to sexualize stuff with Lovecraft. It's like that was not Lovecraft.
that was not
Lovecraft was like an awkward, like socially distant, sort of like, you know, like all that stuff was just not his wheelhouse. And I feel like when
no.
people take it, it's not Lovecraft anymore. It's like I don't know what you did with it.
Yeah, I think Lovecraft is what today we would call asexual. You know,
Well, he was married to that lady, the Jewish
yeah, but
lady that he met,
you know,
and he moved to Brooklyn, and then she moved to Ohio, and after a while, he was like, "Yeah, I'll just move back to Providence."
yeah, yeah. I mean, he just wasn't into being married. And he
Yeah,
wasn't into the whole domestic thing. He was interested in writing and writing letters and his correspondence and his comfortable life where he didn't have much responsibility, which is
right.
true. I always call Lovecraft the first professional fan. He, when he joined amateur journalism, he found a place for himself in the world,
Oh
and
yeah,
and the amateur journalism was kind of like what fanzines became later, and now the internet is. But he was the world's first professional fan. That was his life. That was his
well,
lifestyle.
he penned a whole lot of like reviews and dissections, and like he was like I think he was almost more prolific as a writer talking about other people's stuff than about his own stuff.
Yeah,
Although
unfortunately.
obviously he had plenty of stuff because he didn't live very long, but as long as he lived, it was awesome.
Yeah, yeah. He was an amazing guy. Would love to have talked to him and gotten some of the secrets behind some of his thinking. You know, and he wrote tons and tons of letters, and there are multiple books, collections of his letters, but a lot of them were destroyed. He might have had like 20 volumes of letters that he wrote, of which maybe we have 12.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I remember my girl got me like he was very atheist, and he wrote like a bunch of treatises on religion, and it was all collected into a book, and so she got it for me. And at one point, like I put down my dog, like picked it up in her mouth. I was like, "Well, she made her opinion clear."
Yeah.
But yeah, no, like he tried to be involved in everything. Like in that period, I remember what's the guy who did the King in Yellow?
Oh, Robert W. Chambers.
Yeah, and I remember he like I got his the King in Yellow book, and like the first like six stories, they're really good, but in that era, horror did not sell. So all the
No.
rest are like these crappy romance stories.
Yeah, yeah,
They're
yeah.
very much like 1930s romance, so they especially suck. Like I don't even like modern romance stories, but like 1930s, yeah, they were really bad. But it's like he has so much potential. But it's like Lovecraft had a lot of potential and kept going on with it, and like that's probably why he died so poor. I mean, he'd be a multimillionaire today, but that's probably why he died so poor. But I know that horror in that time was looked down on.
Yeah, it was. Except for Dracula and Frankenstein, which were older and considered classics, and Jekyll and Hyde and a few other things.
Right.
But yeah, horror was looked down upon. Weird Tales was looked down upon. Science fiction was looked down upon.
No,
You
I know,
know,
yeah.
it
And
took a
I
long time.
think maybe because like the people who did like it was a guy who did Dracula, and it was a girl that did Frankenstein, but they were all part of a writers club. So
Yeah,
I think being in England, being part of that writer community, and I think at that point in time, like America wasn't taken as seriously as England was as far as like the literary world went.
yeah. England had a tradition of ghost stories that were considered much more literary than our tradition.
Yeah. Well, it's
Dr.
like
Blackwood, guys like that.
it's weird because we're in a melting pot. So like if you extract the essence of it, we have everything here, which you wouldn't have as much somewhere else. But that's another matter entirely. But all right, man. So the stuff that you have out, you're saying most of it's on Amazon or all of it's
On
on Amazon?
It's free. Yeah, all of it's on Amazon. I also have a website, www.adventuresinbronze.com, where I have my other novels and short story collections. I do Sherlock Holmes, Doc Savage, The Shadow,
Oh, so I'm a
Cars.
huge Shadow fan. Yeah.
Oh, no kidding. You should get my books. I've written a couple of nonfiction books on the Shadow, as well as two novels where Doc Savage meets the Shadow.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I'm a huge Shadow fan. Like I'm old, I'm 51. And I remember like we didn't have a TV or anything. And I was a huge Shadow fan. I listened to the Shadow radio series and I
Yeah,
read the books. And you know, the books are kind of hit or miss because it's William Gibson, but under the pen name Maxwell Grant,
yeah,
and he get paid by the word.
yeah,
So like some of them, like it seems like he really got into it, and some seems like he just put it out there to like get paid. I mean,
yeah.
none of
Well,
them are horrible, but some of them like blow me away, and some of them are like,
yeah.
yeah, all right.
Well, I knew Walter, and Walter did, two novels a month and sometimes three for about 10, 12 years. And
Wow,
if
yeah.
you do that much work, you're going to have hits and misses.
Oh, of
Just,
course, yeah.
yeah. So,
But as a character, that's a kind of character. I mean,
a
like
wonderful.
I think a lot of people don't know, but that was where Batman came from. There would be no Batman if there wasn't the Shadow.
I was one of the guys who discovered that the first Batman story was ripped off from a Shadow story.
I am
Literally
not
ripped off,
surprised. I'm totally not surprised.
literally adapted. And not only this was the story adapted, but Bob Kane borrowed some of the art from the that same issue and redrew it. So they were both in.
Yeah, well, that's unfortunate. Yeah, it's unfortunate they haven't managed to bring the Shadow out like they brought Batman out. Like, they did the Dark Knight Returns. It was like a massive blockbuster, and they do that crappy Shadow movie with Alec Baldwin, and you're like, all right, man, this has so much potential. Why can't you do more with it?
People have pointed out that I think it was Batman Begins, the one where Batman was training in Tibet, and then ends up fighting his mentor.
Which is
Is
also basically stolen from the Shadow, but go
sold
ahead.
from the Shadow. I
Yeah.
mean, just literally, it's the Shadow story, and it's like
I
how many.
think it was what was it, Shangri-La and the Shadow, but it's the same thing basically.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So, they've been milking the Shadow a long time, but he's not getting the respect he deserves.
Yeah. No, I agree. I totally agree. All right, man. So tell me how people can see your stuff. Like if they go to your website, I guess they could request a signed copy of one of your books.
Yeah, well, I because I have to order the books and then reship them. I don't like doing signed copies if I can't help it. But I do have extras of my two Shadow books, my nonfiction Shadow books, which are Master of Mystery and The Dark Avenger. I forget the titles, but right now I have extras of those. If someone wants a signed copy, I'll sell them to them because I have a couple of boxes of those here.
Oh, awesome. All right. And what do you have something coming out like, very recently, like something coming
Yep.
out within like, go ahead.
Well, I just released volume 4 of The Wild Adventures of Sherlock Holmes, which are short stories. I'm about to release sometime this summer The Hangman from Hell, which is a new novel featuring the Spider, another 1930s Paul Piero who's modeled
I
after.
remember the spider, of course. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know Norval Page's great niece, Elizabeth Bissett. In fact, I visited her in New Orleans a couple of weeks back. And so I'm hearing a lot of Norval Page stories and a lot of Spider stories from the family. But The Hangman from Hell, which has a wonderful cover, is coming out this summer, and it guest stars Operator 5, Jimmy Christopher, who's another Paul Piero from that era.
Okay. All right. So everything you have, like the best way to see it is to go to your website.
My website or Amazon, either
Or
in
do you
my
have links on your website to where they can buy it on Amazon?
yeah, my website has no. My website has you can order it from me on the website, but you order it from him. In other words, you can go to my website, see what I have published, and then go to Amazon and order from them. If you
Okay, you
choose
have
to
an
do.
authors page on Amazon.
Yeah, I do. I do. It's got a
Okay.
lot of stuff on it.
that
Pages and pages.
that's not bad. That's not bad at all.
Of
All right, man. Well, thank you very much for being on this. And like I said, I'm a huge fan of Lovecraft, so I love finding out what's going on in the Lovecraft world. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, no, I think we've covered a lot of stuff. I mean, if I talked about my whole career, we could go another hour, because I've written a lot of books and a lot of articles and I did a lot of interviews. I was on the Shadow movie set when they were filming that for about a week. And
So like one of
that
my
was
artistic inspirations was Kaluta, Mike Kaluta. And I
yeah,
know
Mike
Mike
Kaluta.
Kaluta, they brought him on board to like help with the costumes or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah, he did a wonderful Shadow in the 1970s. That was an excellent comic.
Yeah.
Originally, it was going to be Bernie Wrightson, but they didn't. Bernie wanted to get off Swamp Thing and go on to the Shadow, but they wouldn't let him
Well,
off
I
Swamp
know. I think it was issue 3 was pinned by or penciled by Kaluta and
and
inked by
Ink by
Ryson, and
which was
that was the best.
that was a
Because
great
yeah,
combination. That
yeah.
was a great combination. And a thing about the Shadow that people don't know about, one of the inspirations for the Shadow was Dracula. Walter Gibson had seen the 1920, I think it was 728, Broadway production of Dracula. And he was very impressed by Bela Lugosi's use of the cape and use of
Oh
magic.
yeah, no, I did not know
So
that.
so he borrowed some of the Shadow's kind of mystique from Dracula, borrowed some other things from Sherlock Holmes, borrowed some things from Houdini, and that's how he put together his version of the Shadow.
That makes sense, yeah. Especially the Sherlock Holmes and the Houdini. Like, I think a lot of people, like, since they don't know the Shadow, they think, oh, guy, like, in a, kind of a costume. It's not like a Captain America costume, but kind of a
Mhm.
costume and fights crime. But, like, he would do, like, serious investigations. He had, like, a whole squad and everything. I
Yeah.
think it's a lot deeper than people think.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the radio show did not show the Shadow in his all of his dimensions. It was a
Yeah.
watered version, but it was very good. The radio show was good, but the
Neither
pulp
did
magazines
the
had
early TV serials. Did you see those, the old black and white
yeah,
serials?
yeah.
Yeah. But all right, man. Well, thank you very much. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I think that will do. Look for my name on Amazon, Will Murray, or look for my website, www.adventuresinbronze.com, and you can reach out to me through my website. There's a contact page. And I'll be happy to sell anybody any one of my many, many books. I think I got 42 or 3 in print right now and more coming.
Wow. All right. Well, yeah, man. I'll definitely check out your website. Everyone else should as well. And thank you for being on this.
Well, thank you for having me. This has been great.